After you have your cards in order, then you can start to ask questions about what is the best hand that you have. Obviously, you get paid for the best hand that you have, so if you have a royal flush, then there's no reason to continue looking down to see if you have anything else. You'll get paid for a royal flush. So that would be the first thing that I'd check for. In fact, I would check for the greatest payoff cards first, and as soon as you find a hand that is worthy of that payout, you can quit looking. So right here, we can pretty easily see we have a royal flush. I know we would typically look at it like this right here with 10 through ace, but remember, we're treating ace as a 1 right now, so we need to account for the fact that a royal flush would have the ace on the low end here. So we can see that we have a flush. We can see that we have cards in a sequential order. This right here would classify as a straight, 10, jack, queen, king, ace. And if it's both a flush and a straight, and it contains an ace over here and a king over here, then we know this is in fact a royal flush. And as soon as we recognize it as a royal flush, we could just return the result of, hey, this is a royal flush, we can quit looking. But we also need to consider that we have straight flushes. So what if your hand was this right here? This is both a straight and it is a flush, but it is not a royal flush. So if this was the case, then we would just return the result of a straight flush. So how do we check if this is in fact a flush? I actually, for my program, made a separate method that all it does is look through the first 5 elements of my array here, 0 through 4, and compare, is the suit of this equal to the suit of this? Is the suit of this equal to this? Is the suit of this equal to this? Is the suit of this equal to this? And if those were all true, that means they all have the same suit, and you could return a result of that is in fact a flush. That was a separate method that I wrote. Also wrote a method, is this a straight? And in order to determine if it was a straight, basically look at this card and see if its neighboring card was 1 greater. And then look at this card, see if its neighboring card was 1 greater. Look at this card, is its neighboring card 1 greater? Look at this card, is its neighboring card 1 greater? And if all of those were true, then we have straight, and we could return, yes, this is a straight. So if you can call the is this a straight method and it returns true, and you call the is this a flush method and it returns true, then you would have a straight flush. One thing you have to be careful about though in your is this a straight method is that the ace could be low or high. So yes, this is a straight. This is the easier straight to recognize, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And also this would be an easy straight to recognize, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But this straight right here is a special check that we need to make, where it's this one is bigger, or this one right here is 1 less than this one is 1 less than this one is 1 less than this one, and this is an ace down here. So we're checking for that special case where the ace is a high card in our straight. So if we have a value of 10, 11, 12, 13 with a 1 back here as the first value, then this is in fact an ace high straight, and we should also return yes, this is a straight, even though our values are 1, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that would help us to figure out, do we have a royal flush, do we have a straight flush? What about 4 of a kind? So since we have sorted our 5 cards at the beginning of the array here, we can see that in this case we do have 4 of a kind, because this card is equal to the value of this card, value of this card is equal to the value of this card, value of this card is equal to the value of this card, and then who cares what that last one is, we have 4 of a kind right here. But that doesn't mean that 4 of a kind is always set up so that elements 0 through 3 are all the same. There's actually 2 different configurations we could have for 4 of a kind. 4 of a kind where the first 4 cards are the same with an off card over here. Or we might have this situation where we have an off card followed by our 4 of a kind. So there's actually only 2 different configurations for a 4 of a kind. And if we just compare, are these 4 cards the same or are these 4 cards the same, then we can determine if we have a 4 of a kind. There are 2 different ways that we could achieve a full house. We could have a full house where we have a pair followed by 3 of a kind. So we could look for, is this card value the same as this card's value? And then does this card's value have the same as this card's value, and this card is the same as this card? In that case we have a 2 and a 3 for our full house. But the other configuration we could have for a full house is this would also be a full house where we have 3 cards followed by our pair out here. So we need to check for both of those possible configurations where this is equal to this, which is equal to this, and then these 2 are equal to each other. So only 2 possible scenarios for a full house. We either have our 3 here followed by a pair, or we have our 3 here with a pair starting us off. Alright, so if we don't have a royal flush, we don't have a straight flush, we don't have a 4 of a kind, we don't have a full house, then we need to check, do we have a flush? A flush would be our next best hand. So let's see, this right here is what a flush might look like for us. Again, we already talked about how I wrote an is flush method. So this right here, I could just run the is flush method and it would return, yes, this is a flush, and I could just pass back to the program, alright, our best hand is a flush. Also the same with the straight. We already talked about a method I wrote called is this a straight, where it compares one element to its next element to see if we have 5 in a row that are sequential. Also needs to check for the fact that an ace could be either high or low. So straight and flush are very easy to do once you've written that is flush or is straight method. Then we come up with 3 of a kind. 3 of a kind is a little similar to our full house method. Here we have 3 of a kind followed by 2 other cards here. So this would trigger as 3 of a kind, but there's actually, for 3 of a kind, 3 different configurations that we need to be concerned about. We could have a 3 of a kind where the first 3 cards represent our 3 of a kind, so we just need to compare the cards in position 0, 1, and 2, and if they all have the same value, then we have 3 of a kind. But what if those 3 of a kind are in this kind of configuration? Then we need to be aware that position 1, 2, and 3 could represent our 3 of a kind, or this configuration where positions 2, 3, and 4 represent our 3 of a kind with some trash out here in the front. So 3 different checks that we can do to see if our next best hands are the 3 of a kind. Now failing all of those, then our next best hand that we could achieve would be 2 pair. So let's say this is our set of cards. This would be 2 pair right here. But just like with 3 of a kind, 2 pair has 3 different configurations that can show up. We could have our off card here followed by a pair, followed by a pair. So we need to check for that occurring. But we could also have a setup like this where we have a pair followed by our odd man out here, followed by another pair. And the other possible configuration would be something like this, where we have our pair followed by a pair followed by our odd man out. As long as we check for all 3 of those, we should be good. We should be able to identify a 2 pair and return that. But failing that, if we can't find a 2 pair, then the next best thing is just to look for a pair. So we could to look for a pair, all we need to do really is scan through our cards looking for any 2 cards next to each other that are the same. No, not the same. No, not the same. No, not the same. Yes, those are the same. Then we need to do a check. Are they greater than 10? Are they 10s or better? Because we don't care anything about a pair of 5s. A pair of 5s does not qualify you for a payout. So this pair of queens would. So whenever we see that we have a pair next to each other here, we can just do a quick quick check to see if it is tens or better, in which case it is. So we can return, yes, we found tens or better. And if all of that fails, say for example we have some hand like this, we run through all of our possible checks and nothing comes up as a payout hand, then we could simply return, all right, we have a loser here. One thing you might be wondering is, whenever we were talking about three of a kind here, I said, well, this is a possible configuration where we have this equal to this, which is this is equal to this, but then I returned that as three of a kind. And you might be wondering, well, what about if the next card was a 5? Do I also need to write a comparison to ensure that the next card isn't also a 5? Well, if you're starting off with your best hand first, then you've already considered the possibility that you have 4 of a kind. And if you did have 4 of a kind, then your method would have returned an answer of, hey, you have a 4 of a kind. And it would have stopped looking, because remember, as soon as you use a return inside of your method, it stops running that method. So if it saw 4 of a kind, it would return 4 of a kind and then it would quit looking. So the fact that we're still down at this point in the code looking for a potential 3 of a kind means that we know there's not a 4 of a kind in our hand. So we're only looking for a 3 of a kind there, just like we need to, whenever we're looking for 3 of a kind, we don't need to be concerned that maybe we have a full house, because we already looked to see if there was a full house. We know there wasn't a full house. Now we're just looking, is there a 3 of a kind? So if you start at the top of your payout schedule, look for the royal flush first, then a straight flush, then a 4 of a kind, then a full house. If you find none of those, then you know that flush isn't a royal flush, because you would have returned royal flush if it was. So you're down at that point where, is this a flush? No. Is it a straight? No. Is it a 3 of a kind? Yes. Okay, quit looking. That's pretty much how it works. If you can go all the way through all of these without finding anything of interest, then your last answer is you lose all your bets. This was a worthless hand.